Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us. On behalf of Cattle, I am happy to introduce Man Zhang, Professor of Management. I don't know if you are all aware, but Man is one of our high impact teaching winners, and she's going to share one of her practices with us today, specifically utilizing case studies and how she moved that from our in-person format to remote. So thank you, Man. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity for me to come and share some of my practices about um, teaching in the remote learning environment. Oh, so let me share my PowerPoint. Okay, so I've been talking with Kristen about the topics and finally decided that maybe they utilizing the case method to teach in the remote learning environment could be a good one because I'm sure that you know since the COVID started last year, we all experienced the same thing of teaching online, and one of that is how to get the student engaged in the class because really I feel, especially last semester, like I'm talking to myself most of the time. It's hard to get them to involve. So I've been using cases. I know that I'm sure that all of us have been using cases in some way. But then I thought that maybe this is a good time to try to bring in those cases into the online teaching, remote teaching, or hybrid teaching again to try to get them involved in the learning. So um, for me, you all know me, so I don't have to introduce myself. So I mainly teach international business courses. Here are the list of courses I'm teaching, and I will be using some of the courses as example, and those cases I use for those courses as example to help, elaborate how do I use the teaching, case teaching method. Again, I'm sure everybody has been using cases in different way, and we all have our own understanding about what case method, teaching method is. So to me, I think I like it because I think they are the real or stories, and some are invented stories, and they all are used to communicate with students with some kind of educational messages. And a lot of times the stories or the cases include some kind of like problems, dilemmas, and some issues that require students to put their knowledge in, analyzing the case and make a decision. So it's very popular not only in the business field, but also across many other disciplines too. So the reason why we use the case study is, for me, mainly I wanted to use the case to help them understand the key concepts and try to get them involved. Especially for the higher level class, like the capstone I'm teaching right now, the BA 4060. It's a capstone class. There are a lot of theories and a lot of difficult concepts and theories. So I think using some cases to help them to really understand those concepts are very important. Okay, um, so the type of cases that I use or I'm familiar with, maybe there's many other different kinds, and we can talk about that, and you can share with me the ones that you use. But these are the types of cases that I use for my class. So the directed cases, these are the cases that are a scenario that followed by discussion using a set of directed or close-ended questions that can be answered from the course material or from the case. These are used to understand the fundamental kind of concepts or principle and facts. And dilemma or decision cases are those, individuals, institution, or community faced with a problem that must be solved. Student may be presented with actual historical outcome after they work through the case. I use this type of case for the integrative, comprehensive case analysis. And this cases are used to help students to develop their problem solving skill or decision making skills. And the third ones are interrupted case. Present a problem for the student to solve in progressive, disclosure format. Students are given the case in parts. So sometimes I'll talk the first part of the case and ask some questions, and then pause a little bit, and then go ahead and talk and teach the course material, and then give them the second part of the case and ask more questions. So that's the interrupted case, mainly for the problem solving skills and application of knowledge they learn from the class. The last one is analysis or issue case. So focus on answering questions and analyzing the situation presented. Can include some retrospective cases that tell a story and its outcomes, and have students analyze what happened and why alternative solution were not taken. So this can be some older cases that I also use for my class a lot. So these are helping student used to help student to develop some analysis skills. I especially use it for the comprehensive or integrative cases for students to really apply what they learn to work with their peer groups to analyze and solve the problem. So those are the different types of cases that I use. Um, and again, each of us teach the case in different way. For me, I like to encourage, this is how I teach the case. I like to encourage the student to take the ownership. And I'm the one to assign them the case. Usually I will select the case that relate the most to the course content of that week, the concept or theory. So, and the student are the ones to set up the activity, and I work with them the week before. So the student will be the ones to ask a question, summarize the content. They will come up with solutions, and they will discuss the result with the rest of the class. So my role for the case part is to, kind of coordinator for them. And for the students role, so they are playing the following role. They are the starter of the conversation, discussion. They start by asking some questions to the audience, and they facilitate the discussion, and validate their contributions of the peers, ask follow-up questions, and they will make notes about the discussion, summarize it, and then present it to the class. They sometimes will be asked to bring in some, more information, additional information to update the case, and then present the result and further solution about the problems in the case. So, and also they are the rapper. So they are starter of the conversation, facilitator, the note taker, and also the other rapper for the case discussion. So that's the student's role in the case discussion. And there are also some strategies that I use to engage the student then in the case um, discussion. I sometimes use debate or trial. So um, in the face-to-face teaching environment, it's easy, you can divide the class into different groups. But for the online, I use a lot of breakout rooms. So for example, the debate or trial, and I assign them a case, and let the students debate for the result. For example, one of the cases about the globalization, as a double-edged sword. So I would divide the class into different groups, breakout rooms, and some of them in each room there will be two sides. Good. One side argue that globalization is good. The other side argue that globalization is really not that good. So they will have a debate, and then they will note down what they have, and then when I ask them time's up, and then they return to the main Zoom room, I will go through each of the breakout room, and summarize what they have. So that's a debate and trial kind of strategy that I use. Another one is role play or a public hearing. So student will play a role found in the case. For example, here's one that I used in the beginning of the semester's 4060 class. So there's a case about globalization and global strategy. So that question is, critics argue that MNEs through FDI allegedly both exploited the poor in poor countries and take jobs away from rich countries. If you were the CEO of an M&E from a developed economy or from an emerging economy, how would you defend your firm? And then the class will be divided into groups, different breakout rooms, and then some of the students will play like they are media. So I want them to ask a couple, of questions, list of questions, criticism for their peers, and the other team will be the CEOs play role play the CEOs from MEs from poor countries, and then another group will be CEOs from MEs from richer country, and they will be put in the breakout room again, have some debate, take a notes, and then when they are back, we will share our ideas of what they get. So that way, they were forced to really have to pay attention to the case and then participate in the discussion. So, so that's just an example for the second one. And the third one is jigsaw. I use this in my face-to-face class, but it's too difficult to use it in the remote learning environment. So I haven't used that yet, but I'm sure that you are familiar with that. That's, each that's divided the class into different groups, and then each are, expert in their assigned, kind of session, and then they will discuss and make a decision again. The last one, clicker case, that's use the audience response system, for example, like a Kahoot. My students are using that in their integrative case, and I use that in my case discussion too. Basically, for those questions discussed in the case, so that force them to read. Because if you are not familiar with what the case talks about, there's no way that you can participate in the higher level discussion questions. So that's just a way to get them involved in the reading. So I know that's very kind of um, you know uh, general and very abstract. So here I'm going to use my classes for this semester. Some examples for the cases that I use for this classes this semester. This semester I'm teaching management 4400 and 4060 and management 3900. So that's global management and the global strategy and introduction to international business. So I use the following cases in this courses. No, I didn't teach the 44, but I used in the 4400 in the past. Um, so sorry. Do you have any questions? I feel like I'm talking.
I have a question, Man.
Sure.
What do you do to ensure the students are prepared to discuss the case? Do they get it in advance or,
Yeah,
you know?
I to make sure that they really because I know that only if you grade them they will read. So I I make the participation, uh, uh, you know, heavy weight in terms of grade. So it's like they have to like 100, 200 point out of 1,000 points. So that's a lot of points that they have to, um, you know, to gain if they wanted to perform well in this class. So that closing case, for example, one of the closing case, I assign them some points, like 15 points each case. They have to read and write a format of a memo format to submit the homework. So that's a different way. So it's like assigning a lot of points to those discussion um, cases so that they will pay attention and they will be prepared. And I sometimes made cold call at the beginning. It's like one serves as checking attendance, another to make sure that they read. So I would say, hey, Kristen, can you tell us what the case is all about? Anything. So that will make them to, at least they'll read some of the case. Um, yeah.
So, Mon, I have a question. Of the different types of cases that you've been using, uh, are there any that have been maybe more successful in the online format? Or, you mentioned that the jigsaw just didn't work, but,
Yeah.
are there some that are more successful or,
Yeah.
are there any suggestions there?
Yeah. This is what I'm going to. How about let me go
Oh,
as
you're gonna cover that. Okay,
yeah, I'm
never
going to
mind.
cover. I'm going to cover this. I just want to pause and see if you have questions. So I'm going to talk about each of the case that I'm using in my class, and then see if that answered your question. Yeah.
Sounds
So
great.
this are some of these are the ones that I've been using, and I feel they are more successful. So first of all, like the opening case, these are smaller cases, short cases, and they are the directed type of cases. I ask the more straightforward type of question, check about the facts, and then where the student understand the basic information about the case. So I use this at the beginning of the class. So uh, start with a student summarizing the case to get them warm up. Like for example, I serve two purposes: checking the attendance and also the student warm up. Getting ready to talk about the key concept or theory in the class. For example, like when I talk about resource-based view, I use IBM. So it's a story about IBM in the beginning of the class. So student will talk about why IBM is so successful because of the resource that capability they develop. What are the resources and the capability that they have? So they will start to talk about the resource, and the capabilities mentioned in that case. And then that will encourage them to be wanting to know, oh, okay, so then why this are so important? What's the relationship between the resource and capability with the long-term performance? So um, that works pretty well for me to use the opening cases. And students seem to be, um, they are willing to kind of read and talk because it's the easy points to gain because they need to gain like 100, 200 participation points. And to start and talk about the summary of the case, it's easier to answer those more challenging questions later on. So they are willing to participate in the opening case discussion. Um, so um, and the next one is called emerging market cases. So these also are the directed case and smaller cases I use during the lecture. During the lecture to help students and check student understand certain, concepts. Uh, for example, when I talk about political uncertainty, I use the emerging market strategy developed in Pakistan. So managing uncertainty in Pakistan, and then OFDI, decision in emerging market to talk about the economic uncertainty. So those are the smaller cases in between that during the lecture. So when we're introducing some concept like political uncertainty, economic uncertainty, I will use some stories to elaborate. And I require students, I pre-assign this cases in the syllabus, and I will remind students to read before they come to the class that these other cases, the chapter is very long. Here are some of the cases you have to read because I'm going to use those cases. So student, prepared when they come to talk about it. Usually I will say, okay, here's the political uncertainty. Can anyone tell me anything about, what happened in Pakistan during this time? And they will talk. And then they were like, oh, this is what you mean by political uncertainty. And that what you mean by economic uncertainty.
Mon, can I ask a question
Sure.
about undergraduate versus graduate students? Do you
Yeah,
notice a difference in their ability to engage with the case studies?
right. Um, well, the undergraduate, I also teach the management 6100, but I taught it in the, regular face-to-face format. I haven't taught the remote or, hybrid for the 6100. I will be teaching 6100 again this summer, so I don't know in what way I'm going to teach it. But when I taught in face-to-face, I use more comprehensive cases for the graduate class. And I feel like their comprehension and their way to apply the knowledge and theory learned uh, from the lecture is much how to say the better than the undergraduate students. So because of that, so I tend to use a lot of smaller cases or direct cases in the undergraduate classes because I feel like they kind of, they can understand, absorb the knowledge or, the messages in those short cases better rather than you give them too, because students tend to be buried and getting frustrated if you give them too many comprehensive cases. So I tend to use smaller, shorter cases and closing cases for them to understand, one case maybe for one or two concepts. So that way I feel like it's better than give them a very long cases. And they got buried in the details and don't get a main picture. I don't know if I answered that.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So this is another like strategies in actions is similar to the ones in emerging market, but this is particularly related to dilemma and decision making, and especially for my 4060 class, the global strategy class, for how strategies are made for the company. For example, I used the Ryan Air for the low cost strategy when we talk about the low cost strategy, and I use Carnival Foods to Carnival Health for the 5 forces. And these are very well written cases and elaborate very well. You have to choose the ones that can, reflect or apply the have a good link with the concept that you talk, that they can see clearly, oh, this is what they do for low cost, why low cost. And we are very familiar with Ryanair. And they say, oh, that's low cost strategy and 5 forces. And that's how they use the 5 forces to analyze the business environment and adopt a new, strategy for the cardinal food to cardinal health. So those are the smaller cases. And also, so those are, I require students to read and take quick notes to participate in class discussion to gain the participation point. I do have written assignment like a little bit longer. So if you say like those smaller cases I used before, those maybe half page or only 1 page. The closing cases are usually about a page or 2 page long, smaller, in smaller cases too. But this can be the direct cases, dilemma, or decision making, and also cases related to what we talk about in class. So this is like homework. So they need to answer the question. Those questions are usually related to the class material we discussed in that day. So it's a homework they have to submit before the start of the class, because by the end of each lecture day, we will talk about the closing case. So, and they have to, submit that to get their homework assignment points. I am not only just use those shorter cases, direct cases, I also use this integrative cases, which are longer cases. So they are the comprehensive case. They are the last type analysis or issue cases. So I let students work in team, students and the team. This is students and team kind of lead discussion. Student asked to analyze the case, to provide additional information. If it's an older case, what happened with, for example, we talk about the little ship company and what happened during that time, why they made that decision, and then what happened later on. They have to provide more information. They have to search more information about that case and ask additional information for the student to participate and answer question. So they organize the discussion and they come up with some debate activity, role play, and breakout room activities. And each student is assigned with a group. So we have, for example, 11 chapters. So there are 11 groups. So each topic, I have a group of students lead an integrative case discussion. This is a longer, 5, 6, 7 pages long integrative case. And they are in charge of, this is like 100 points per case. So it's weighted heavily for this. So they are really take it more seriously than the reading smaller cases. Here are some of the grading criteria that I use for the integrative case. I want them to provide reliable, updated information, understand the key concept. I want to see the application of theory and concepts, the analysis, interaction with audience, and communication. I want them to use some creative content, like do some activities, those kind of things are used. And another one, the same group, not only they will do one time of integrative case study, and they also will write up after the whole semester. For example, for my BA 4060, after the whole semester, if I counted, I used 50 different firms, 50 I listed, different cases for the whole class. So after reading all the small cases, longer cases, and the student asked to write up a case themselves. So working with the same group that they work with the integrative case team members, they're going to write up a case, with some problems in their mind, and they will have to analyze the problem, apply the theory learned from their class, and provide solution and solution, and make a decision on which solution they wanted to use. So I have a detailed guideline for how to do the case write-up, and this is a challenging project. So they will start to prepare right after they finish their integrative kind of case analysis, and then they will start to prepare for this. So I ask them to pick up their own company, usually the one they are very familiar with. They know someone, maybe their family member, their parents, or their friends, or their boyfriend, girlfriends who work or intern there. And then they will write up, they will do some interview, they will get the problems, they will write up those problems in the case, and they will analyze. So they know there's a problem, and they write it up, and they analyze it, they provide solution for that. So, and I have, again, like a detailed guideline for how to read it. This is the big categories of how I grade the the case write-up. I look at their storyline, how do they apply their theory and knowledge, organization, analysis, and recommendation. And I do have a rubric for how to do that. I know this is probably a little too much information. Let me give you a student example, so maybe help you to understand how the student, for example, this one, my student just did this last week, and I really like it. So this is a student's integrative case analysis that they just did. So the topic for for this group is institutional environment. So their case is about, when Macau, the gambling on the edge of China. Basically, this is the case to help them understand the institution, informal institution and formal institution relationship with the Chinese government, and stuff like that. So it's a comprehensive case. They lead the discussion. So this is the group, the team member. I worked with them the week before. So, talk about, how should we plan for this discussion, what kind of activity they should do and stuff like that. So, and the student will start with a Kahoot. They develop a Kahoot so that the student, I think they use about 13 questions about those basic things that mentioned in the case, just to check if student really pay attention to read the case. And it's more fun to start the presentation. So after that, they summarize the case, what's going on, and they give student one more opportunity to talk about what's going on in the case, and student usually will participate. And this is a fun part that students like to gain some, participative points. And then they will summarize it, and then they will kind of revisit what we talk about in class, what is formal institution and what is informal institution. And then they come up with the questions about, okay, here are the question about the case, discussion questions, and they will use breakout room for the student to get into each of their room and focusing on the questions that listed here. And about give them 5 or minutes, and then we'll come back and they will come back and they'll come back and talk about the case, and they also summarize their key findings or answers for each of those questions. And after this, because for this chapter, the key thing we talk is the Porter's diamond. So the student will then revisit what is Porter's diamond to kind of reassure that student understand what is it. And then we will talk about, each student got assigned one thing, one dimension, and then relate this with the case. So from the using the case, you talk about using the using the Porter's diamond to analyze the case, and each assign one dimension to do that. And then again, we'll come back. So from each of the breakout room, and then we'll come back and they will summarize, the main discussion points and go through that. And they update the case, because the case, when they were written, they are older cases. No, they are required to update what's going on afterwards. So they provide the most updated information about the gambling industry in Macau today. And then follow that, they ask more questions about, what are the factors in recent development may significantly affect the performance as well as other things. So this, again, another very good, this is open to the whole classroom, no more breakout discussion. And another question is the ethical issues. I'm not going to read this, but it's like the ethical issues related to the companies and also, decision makings. And then we have another. So it's a 75 class. You will be amazed that how the 75 minutes is sometimes not enough for the student discussion. And I found this works pretty well for the class. So that's the main thing that I have. And so if you have any questions.
I guess my question has to do with the whole mechanics of remote. And I know Donna just left. I was going to have her help you answer this question. I know she talked about using collaboration within Canvas and then breakout rooms. I've only tried a breakout room like in the first week of class and it didn't go well. So I'm like scared to try it for real. Like the students were complaining they can only see, I don't know the mechanics of the technology and all that, but they could only see themselves and they couldn't see the document we're trying to discuss or the spreadsheet we're trying to build. And I don't know, maybe by the time I figure out all this stuff, the remote will be done with and we'll be back to face, but I'm still scared about how do I use collaboration? How do I use breakout rooms? I don't know if you can speak
Well, I use the breakout room. I also use the pre-assigned breakout room. And I learned that, well, this one time it's embarrassing that I spent a lot of time trying to do a pre-assigned breakout room. So you have to use the CVS format, and I divided at 15 groups because I use in my 3900. I have the project in 3900 too. So I have the 15 group pre-assigned. So I feel very confident that I'm all set. So when I turn, I say, okay, guys, now I'm going to open the room and for you to go. Once I click open all the room, it's only room number. There's no student inside that. So later on, I found that, oh, okay, because I use a recurrent, session for the class. And you cannot do it if you open a new session, new class, new link, and then you can have the pre-assigned classroom, and then you have to start from there, and then you might be able to have the pre-assigned room with the students already in that. But if you're using recurring link, and then you cannot do that. So what I ended up doing is I found that is not that bad because I have 45 students in my class. So I let the student, for example, if I do a good and bad discussion, as a student, put your good and bad in front of your first name, so that I can see. And you can then go assign. I have 15 rooms assigned already, so I can quickly move good to room 1, bad to room 2, and then it takes only 2 to 3 minutes to do that. And I use a lot of breakout rooms, so that's what I use. If I cannot pre-assign them, so far I cannot do the present. The only way I can do is to pre-assign the 15 rooms already, empty room. So I have to manually assign the students to go into each of the room. So if I wanted to know, okay, so what cases, so if you are doing case 1, 2, 3, and then you put that in front of your name, so that I because I cannot remember which student is doing what part. I will let them put their part in front of their name so that I can sign. For example, country. You're doing Canada, you're doing Japan, you're doing like China. You put the country name as your name in the class, and then I can simply just put them into their group. So that happened to me too. But I found that breakout room is a good thing to use to help students to get involved in the class discussion, because if we have like 45 students all in, one thing is my screen is too small, I cannot see all of them.
Yeah.
Another thing is, like, I have a lot of students, they do, at the beginning, I don't trust them that they may not have really Wi-Fi issue, but then later on, I think I really trust that some students really have some bad Wi-Fi issue. They kept sending me email and say, Dr. Zhang, I'm so sorry, I cannot, because, I got kicked out for many times from the classroom, and then I have to relog in. So I know that some students really have some Wi-Fi issues. So even though I require them to all turn on their camera, but I always have like 4 or 5 students cannot. And they are chatting with me and they said, Dr. I cannot, because if I turn on my camera, it's going to be very slow. I cannot hear it well. So those are the challenging part too. But breakout room works well when they are in smaller group. They feel more comfortable talking with each other, so you can join them. So I and the 4 leading discussant will join each of their breakout rooms and check on them and see, hey, how are we doing, and are we doing good, and it turned out work pretty well from the result that the answers that they come up with.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and man, I have a different question. Chris, I'm happy to chat with you. I think what she explained could be quite intimidating.
Yeah.
And because it's really pretty well, you're very intricate in how you're setting it up, Mon, and it's really, and what's emerging is a whole kind of new approach to how we manage these remote sessions, from intermediate level of engagement, beginner, intermediate levels of engagement, or high and low, medium, high levels of engagement, and what needs to happen to support them.
Mm-hmm.
But you can do low and still kind of achieve the same goals. But I can show you some ideas to help you, so you don't get stuck like that.
That'd be great, because
Yeah. So I have a question for you, Mom,
Yeah.
on the debate. I'm going to be using a debate format, and I just wanted to know if I really want them to debate, and I want to have where the students actually vote for like who won the debate, and use actual debate skills, debate format and stuff like that. What have you learned, or any tips on how to get the students to learn how to do, formal debate processes and build some skills that they can use in addition to learning the content, but they're developing debate skills? What have you learned about that?
Well, because for me, my main goal is to help them to develop some kind of problem solving skill, decision making skill. Debate skill is not really my main focus. So my purpose for using that debate is to help the student understand the sides for globalization, the good side and the bad side. So as long as we can all talk all those positive and negative things about globalization, and that satisfies my teaching goal. So but I do, in order to get a better debate kind of activity, I do assign student pre class. So they are assigned into different group. You are the group into to talk about the good side for globalization, and you are in the group of bad side of globalization, and each of them asked to prepare at least the 3 evidence, okay, to argue that your globalization is good for this reason 1, 2, 3. The other student, the globalization is really bad from this reason 1, 2, 3. So that thing can help them to really start. And then you have to facilitate the discussion, because otherwise it will go. Because some students are
Yeah,
very
so
well.
what I'm not hearing is that you're giving them formal debate skills, because I want to like teach formal debate skills and critical thinking and like the terminology of it, so that they're actually learning that technique and
About debate.
how to argue from a critical thinking point of view and so forth, and actually the tools. Like Neil Brown's book, is on critical thinking, is just super easy. It's a great model. And whenever I've taught it, students walk away with a life skill. So I'm thinking like, would that make sense to do something like that?
I simplify the debate procedure as when students start with, I think globalization is good because, it increased, people's living standard. Okay, so that's your argument. Globalization is good. You have to provide a kind of supporting argument. And then that's your story from there. And then the other one said, no, I don't agree, because how about from there you say, no, I don't agree because of this. And then you provide your supporting things. So that's kind of, argument supporting area, you go from there. So one by one. So that the debate will go from one point to the next point. By the end of the 15 minutes, usually 10 points will be covered, which will be, pretty nice on each side. There's some chat thing I haven't got.
We're brainstorming Zoom ideas and
Oh,
breakouts.
Sorry,
I-
I understood Chris's question a little bit differently. So I was trying to give him something that I've done in the past.
Oh, okay.
He was saying that sometimes students can't see the stuff, and I've shared this in a thing before. I don't know if
Collaboration.
yeah, I create a Google Doc, and I share it with them. And I kind of have a link to one that I've did last week. And basically what I do is I share the link to it beforehand. And then the first page has instructions, and then each page the students can type in their responses. I stole this from a session this summer, this method. But this is a way that the students have then access to, like you can do Google Sheets, which is Excel files, and you can create that there and then share that. That's something, like I said, that's something I've done to help them be able to see stuff in the breakout rooms.
Yeah, last semester I didn't do the breakout room. I did not know how to use the breakout room. Last semester I used the discussion board on Canvas. So I created a link, for the globalization debate, good side and bad side. So the students who support the, globalization is good, they will participate in one link and the other one. So student can read both discussion room. But the main points are all discussed over the discussion board, but it's not, I feel like it's better if you can just talk to really have that debate kind of feeling. so so that's why I started to use the breakout room this semester, did not use the discussion board.
Man Jane has a question in the
Oh,
chat.
sorry.
She wondered if, oh no, I'm looking at it for you.
Okay,
Have
thank
you
you.
ever tried case studies in an asynchronous class?
Yeah, yeah, I do that. I let students do for the online for the online 3900 4060 last semester I teach it on fully online. So I let students do the um, case study and write up the case. Basically, just write up the case and answer some question using format. But I think this the the way that I'm doing right now works better to have students engage in the discussion
So
because
asynchronously, they do it on their own versus in
they
a
do
group.
they do the case analysis on their own, the smaller cases, closing cases on their own, and then they do the case write up as a group. Yeah. Sometimes I do two different ways. One time I let students do as a group, but there are a lot of issues because of different time and hard to find a common time to work and meet, and it's a lot of so. And then I started to let them do individual cases. It's easier for them to individual cases, but a lot of work. But since that's the main, but for if I teach in 4060 for a fully online class, I let student I don't do a lot of opening closing cases because it's my lecture recorded and they can read, and then there's no participation, so they will do individual case write up cases. So very time consuming, so it's not group. If I don't let them do group, then they don't have to do a lot of smaller cases. If they do group, and they do a lot of smaller cases, just to balance the workload.
We're coming up on the end of our time. Are there any other questions you want to get out there?
Mon, I missed the beginning, so I came. So I apologize if you talk about this. But one thing I was curious about, and when we talk about cases, are all the cases you said short ones and long ones? Are these all like Harvard type, or are these news articles? Like how are you doing where are you getting the cases? And I'm sorry, I apologize. I missed the beginning. You just said this.
I used to buy the Harvard business cases for the graduate students. I buy those cases because you have to pay to buy, and then I make copies or I post online for the student. But there's only you cannot do that all. I did check about the copyrights and things. They said once if you buy them and you can do that. So I make a kind of case book for the student. That's for the graduate student, but I have to pay and buy those cases. Um, but for this 3900 and 4400, I search online to find smaller cases, and I use the cases from the book, which are readily available if they are good and matches with what I'm talking about. But a lot of time using, smaller cases from, online Google for search kind of news or stuff like that.
It's like news articles would be part of it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, I
Oh,
use
okay.
that. Yeah.
Okay. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it would be great if Linda Rich could kind of bring all these together, especially if other folks have been using them, because it sounds like I use movies a lot the same way you use business cases.
Oh, talking about movie. I
Yeah.
use movie too. I use Shanghai Calling for my 3900 class. So that serves as my interpretive case, or the analysis case. So I let the students start. I start the semester for asking the student to watch the movie. So they went, oh, this is fun. Start to watch a movie, and it's a romantic movie. If you don't relate that to the international business, it's really like I don't know if you have watched the movie Shanghai Calling. So really, it's a romantic movie, love story, but actually it's all about international business. So I kept using the main character talking about, hey, what did Sam say about this? What do you think Sam made a mistake about this? So I kept using the whole movie throughout the semester. And I asked them to watch the movie again by the end of the semester. And they were like, oh, it's from totally different perspective. For a lot of things, they focus on the love story at the beginning. And then at the end, they said, I didn't, stop thinking about the stuff we talk about in class. But when I watched the movie, at the end again, because the things that we talk about is all related to all the institutional environment, the firm's resources and capability, all the skills and strategies. So it's a different perspective that they have after the whole semester. So that's, I guess that's also, movie is also a different kind of a case, but more fun way. So
Yeah, no, I use movies primarily because I had such a tough time finding cases that would
right,
apply on lots of levels. So yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And Jan pointed out using movies, and I think we have a link to the program I did in October. So maybe
And
Donna or Chris.
one thing I feel pretty encouraging and rewarding is after 3 weeks of the class, students started to using the cases themselves. When they answer a question, they will say, hey, look at our cardinal. I was like, you know what? You are using the cases. You are referring the cases. So by the end of the semester, because the whole semester we are covering 50 different companies, more than that. And they are referring, if they can remember, only 5 of them or 10 of them. So I said, when you are making presentation to your, boss in the future, you're talking about, hey, not like this is according to the theory. Nobody likes to hear what theory says. They will say, oh, this is a real company, Cardinal, from a small company become the number 1, food, healthy food supplier in the US. This is what they did. And that makes you sound very knowledgeable. And they can refer to like 5 to 10 different cases. I think that's rewarding. I feel like, especially toward the end, and all the students when they answer the question, and when in the class participation, they will start referring about all different companies we have talked about. I feel very happy about that. Yeah.
Any other questions for Man? Okay, well, thank you so much. Oh my goodness, Man, you certainly have this down to a science. It's well developed and it's obvious that students are engaged and really impactful. Thank you so much for
Well,
sharing
thank you
with us.
for the opportunity. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.